All right, so we are moving on with Moses and the children of Israel, and the Ten Commandments is where we're going to be today, right? So we got to make some progress, so that's where we're going to be today. So we are going to start with a pop quiz. The question is, can you name the Ten Commandments in order? Who knows the first one? That's easy. Oh, wife wants it. Wife thought she wanted it. That's a good paraphrase. Right? No other gods before me, right? And we're going to paraphrase it on the board because they're long to write sometimes. No other gods, no other little g gods before me, right? What's number 2? Right? No graven images. What's 3? Oh, sorry. Nice try. Who's number 3? Out of order. That's right. Yeah, and what are you reading over there? Okay. All right. So no Lord's name in vain. Very good. What's number 4, Clint? There you go, Clint. Right? Sabbath day. What's number 5? Here's where it gets tricky. Wow, everybody knows that one. All the mothers especially. They jumped on that one.
First word is 5 letters.
Oh.
Honor.
There you go. Oh, you just got old schooled. Mrs. Housley's using a different version over there.
I was using the teaching.
All right, what's 6? Very good. No kill. 7. No. Yes, that's true. No adultery. Sorry. I just like saying no. 8. Nope, not yet. No stealing. No stealing. Right, because you got to steal and then you got to cover it up, right? So there you go. No false witness. And number 10, no covet, right? Did you know that the church has recently, the church loosely there, has recently implemented an 11th commandment? Yeah. It's thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Thank you. And with that, I'll be here all day. All right, very good. So, Exodus chapter 20 is where we're starting. So we've got the list of the 10 commandments. Exodus chapter 20, verse 1 is where we'll be starting. Exodus 20, verse 1 says, "And God spake all these words, saying," and then he goes on to list the 10 commandments going down from 2 through 17 there, right? Okay, what's interesting there is we think this is when God did give the 10 commandments, yes, but he's speaking them. He's speaking them right now to the whole congregation of Israel. Everybody's hearing the exact same thing, okay? Moses didn't go up and receive the tablets with the 10 commandments until chapter 24, verse 12. Right? And then Exodus 24, verse 12 is where, "And the Lord said unto Moses, Come up to me in the mount, and be there, and I will give thee tables of stone, and a law, and commandments which I have written, that thou mayest teach them." Okay, so he's speaking them in verse 20, and he's actually physically handing the tablets of stone to Moses in chapter 24, and then again later on, right? Okay? What's interesting that we have here is that in verses 3 through 11, we have 2 categories of commandments, All right? And 3 through 11 is the first 4 commandments, and it fills in one of the categories. The first category is man's relationship with God. Okay? The first one is man's relationship with God. And establishing those guidelines and boundaries there. And then 5 through 10 is man's relationship with man. Slash mankind, right? Mankind's relationship with mankind, right? How we're supposed to treat other people. And we see that in Matthew 22. Matthew chapter 22, let's turn there quick. Matthew chapter 22, verses 36 through 40. Matthew chapter 22, verses 36 through 40. Say, and this is when a lawyer is coming to Jesus, and he is saying in 36, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. So all these 4 right here, they can be summed up in that, right? Loving God. Okay? And then as we carry on, verse 38, this is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And then on these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Okay? And okay? Everything in the law, everything in the prophets boil down to these 2 categories, right? How are we loving God and how are we loving man? Okay? That's where everything is broken down to. Summing up God's natures, God's characteristics, because who is our example as Christians? Right? Christ. Right? And what did he do? What did he do for us? Laid down his life. Why? Because of love. Right? God sent his son because he loved us. Christ died on the cross because he loved us. Right? If you look through the stories in the Gospels of Christ's interaction with people, you will often see the word compassion there, right? He had compassion on them, and then he's prompted to do some action, right? The love that's there that he has for people, right, is what he wants us to have as well. And he's laid out these commandments, right? So we know how to interact, A, with him and B, with other men. All right? John 14:15. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. John 14:15. John 14:15 says what, Bob? Right, that's pretty simple, right? If ye love me, keep my commandments. Who's speaking? Jesus is, right? If ye love me, keep my commandments. Okay? It's interesting. We've had this conversation, or we taught this subject in teen class before, right? About how, if you love me, keep my commandments. What are we as people told to do? Right? Especially like in the teen class, what is the job of a child? What does the Bible say the job of a child is? Obey the parents, right? So bottom line is, if you as a child are not willing to obey your parents, A, you don't love them, and B, you're not loving God. We don't often like to boil it down that way, but that's where it is. Right? If we're not willing to obey our leader in whatever position it is, whether it's child and parents, wife and husband, husband and God, husband at work, wife at work, whatever it is, right? If we're not willing to obey, because what does it say? If ye love me, keep my commandments. And what does God tell us to do? Children are supposed to obey. Wives are supposed to admit. Husbands are under authority at work, right? You think about the Roman centurion whose kid was sick, right? And he goes to Jesus, look, you don't even need to come. Look, I'm a man under authority. If I tell somebody to go, they go. If I tell somebody to come, they come. Right? But it's the relationship with our authority that's different. Because there's two ways or two reasons that we obey. Right? One is fear. One is love. God wants it out of love. Why? What does God want? He wants a relationship, right? Think about your Greek and Roman God scenarios, right? What kind of dealings did that culture have with their gods? Was it one of love or was it one of fear? Fear, right? Think about where the Israelites just came from and all the gods of the Egyptians, right? What was the relationship with the Egyptians and their gods? Was it one of love or one of fear? Right? Did the Egyptians love Pharaoh or did they fear Pharaoh? Right? Nebuchadnezzar, was he loved or was he feared? Okay? But the difference there is with our God, the living God, He wants a relationship with us based on love, not fear. All right, Romans chapter 13. Romans chapter 13. Romans chapter 13, verses 8 through 10. Romans chapter 13, verses 8 through 10. Owe no man anything, but to love one another. For he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandments, it is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. Love is the fulfilling of the law. Love is the fulfilling of the law. Okay? Love will determine what we will do. It will also determine what we won't do. Right? Think about the marriage relationship, right? If we love our spouses, are we going to cheat on our spouse? No. If we love our spouse the way we're supposed to love our spouse, are we going to lie to our spouse? No. Right? If we love our God the way we're supposed to love our God, how does that change our lives? Right? Are we going to have anything else above Him? Are we going to have idols in our lives? Right? Are we going to take His name as vain? Are we going to honor the Sabbath day? Right? If we love other people the way we're supposed to, as Christians, love other people, is that not going to change how we interact with them? Right? Are we going to lie to them? Are we going to try and cheat them? Steal from them? Covet their stuff, right? Go up and down the list there. Are we going to kill them if we love them? No. Peter.
Comparing this to other guys, too, I mean, the whole difference is God is love. Satan tries to imitate God, but He is not love. So none of his religions have love. And if you actually study the New Age stuff, that kind of stuff, and even the darker side, the number one law they say is do as thou wilt. It's all about loving yourself.
Sure, it's what do I want?
Loving yourself.
Yeah, right? What's the opposite of love? Well, it's going to be hate. It's going to be selfishness, right? Which is where all this stuff comes from. If I can't have it, well, I deserve it, so I'm going to take it, right? Whatever it is, okay? It's funny, the attitude that is prevalent in the world is that if I can't be happy, well, why should you be happy, right? So I'm going to make it miserable on you, right? You don't deserve to be happy. Wow, that's a fairly selfish attitude to have, right? But as a Christian then, flip that over, what is our attitude supposed to be towards other people, right? How do we help people, right? How do we fill in those gaps, the troubles that they're having, right? Those types of things. How do we aid, Chuck?
I wasn't going to answer that question. I was just thinking, when you were talking about, if I can't be happy, nobody else can, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, when you walk in the Spirit, you have everything you need, and you know it. In fact, you think about it.
Sure. Peace that passes understanding. Mm-hmm.
It's not that you have a mansion or a fancy car or lots of money. You might.
Right.
And that's miserable if you just aren't walking with God.
Yeah.
You don't need anything.
Yeah. You will often hear from celebrities that are honest. They had everything they could possibly want, and yet they're not happy, right? But then a Christian can have everything they need, right? There's a difference between needs and wants. Everything they need, and yet have peace. They can have joy. Why? Where does that come from? Right? That relationship that's there. Well, you can flip it around too to even newlyweds, right? You can have the newlywed relationship. All I need is you, babe. As long as you're there, we can go through anything. Well, you flip it around and it's God, right? If you have that type of relationship with God, what else do you need, right? Because God said in His Word, He will supply all your needs, right? Very good. Exodus chapter 20. Let's flip back there again. Exodus chapter 20. Exodus chapter 20. So 2 through 17 list out the commandments, right? Commandment number 1 starts off in verse 3, right? Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Verse 4 through 6 is the next one. 7, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. 8 through 11, remembering the Sabbath day. Now this is an interesting one, because after verse 11, it goes into honor thy father and thy mother, etc. Thou shalt not kill. And it's all these little one-liners in 13, 14, 15, 16, right? But 8 through 11 is interesting. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath day of the Lord. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, thy maidservant, thy cattle, not the stranger that is within thy gates. Right? That sounds like a commandment, doesn't it? This is what you're supposed to do. There you go. Do that. Verse 11 is interesting. He gives a reason why. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Okay? What just happened there? Who can tell me what just happened there? You've got this list of commands. Thou shalt not, do this, do that, no, 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 no. Right? What happened in verse 11? Peter.
A bit of a history lesson. Well, God created at this time, but also He established the week. Month goes by the moon, year goes by the sun, earth going around the sun. There's no reason for a week other than God. So that's why some I think it was the French when they revolted years ago, tried to get rid of it. They went to like a 10-day week or something like that.
French. Right? Okay. So it is a bit of a history lesson, is it not? What is God saying? Joe.
What I gather out of it is you do nothing but keep holy the Sabbath.
Sure. Why? What did he say? What did God say? What did God say that is still questioned today? He made everything. Right? Exactly. That's exactly it. God made everything. That's the reason I can give the commandments. Right? So there's two things that are being established here. One is God created. Go back to Genesis 1. And then from that it establishes his authority. Right? If you go back to Genesis 1. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And it goes on from there, right? So we have in Genesis 1, God created. We know that. We have faith and trust in that. What is God explicitly telling them? I made it. All this, I made it. Right? Think about Job. Job, if you start in Job 38, right? Where, Job 38. Job 38. Verse 1. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, "Who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge?" Right? Talking about his buddy that was rambling on for chapters here, Elihu. Right? I love that verse. That's just so funny. God's like, who is this clown? And then in verse 3, gird up thy loins like a man, for I will demand of thee, and answer thou me. And he goes on for chapters saying, where were you when I did? Where were you when I set up? Can you do this? Knowest thou? Who can? Oh yeah, me. Right? He goes on for chapters and just lists off these things. Do you know this? Do you know this? Do you know this? No, you don't. I do. Can you do this? Can you do this? Nope, I can. Right? Meekness. Right? I try to teach my kids about meekness. I define meekness as power under control. Right? Especially the olders dealing with the youngers, right? Because we've got the range. Can Jason become annoyed at Chloe and just snap her in half and throw her in a corner? Yes. Will he? No. A, because he loves her. B, power under control. Right? That's what I think of with God. Right? It's funny to think about. In Job 38, he's listing off all this stuff. Can you? Can you? What did you do? Can you make? Nope. Guess what I did? I created everything. Where are your credits? What's on your resume? Job. Right? But yet, when God deals with us, does he just smash us with his thumb going, Ben, Darlene, Michael, Kim, right? No. Long suffering, right? Okay. Go to Isaiah chapter 33. Isaiah 33. Verse 22. Isaiah 33, verse 22. For the Lord is our judge. The Lord is our lawgiver. The Lord is our king. He will save us. Right? There's a lot in that little verse. Right? What is God to us? What is God to us? There's three terms that are there to describe him. Complete authority, right? Lawgiver, judge, and king. Right? Does anybody question the king? We don't have a monarchy here. But think about Nebuchadnezzar. Did anybody question Nebuchadnezzar and live? Right? Okay? The one in complete authority. The one who establishes the law. Not only is he the one that establishes the law, but he's the one that judges by the law he established. Okay? James 4:10. James 4:10. Oh, that can't be right. Yeah, James 4:10 through 12. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. Which is interesting because he's the king and the judge. So if you're going to have an attitude in front of the king, in front of the judge, how's that going to go for you? All right. Verse 11, speak not evil one of another, brethren. He that speaketh evil of his brother and judgeth his brother speaketh evil of the law and judgeth the law. But if thou judge the law, thou art not a doer of the law, but a judge. There is one lawgiver who is able to save us, to save and to destroy. Who art thou that judgest another? Right? Think about what this verse is saying. Right? How many lawgivers are there? One. Thank you. It wasn't a hard question. How many lawgivers are there? One. How many judges are there? One. So, as the verse here says, when we start to judge one another, what are we making ourselves? We're making ourselves the judge. Well, wait a minute. Who's the judge? Who's supposed to be the judge? God is. Right? Okay. Let's go back to the first commandment. What's that? No other gods before me. So when we take judgment into our own hands, in what position are we trying to insert ourselves? Into God's place. Right? Think about this in the family. Oh, man, wow. Think about this in the family. Chuck, I'm sure your family knows gangland justice, I'm sure. Right? That's what I call it, right? It's gangland justice, right? When your brother is an idiot, but your parents don't take care of it, whose responsibility is that to take care of? Right? And I'm sure your sons had a similar relationship there.
They judged the way your dad judged. Can you imagine that?
Yeah. Right? But when we as siblings judge the other sibling, whose place are we trying to take? Right? We're trying to take the father's place. Right? It's weird now to notice that like 30 years later, but there it is. Right? Okay? Same way as what James is trying to tell us here. When we try and judge in God's place, what are we in effect doing? Right? Peter. Yeah.
the part about God, but then the second part is you're judging yourself.
Yeah.
You're judging others. And of course, New Testament, if we judge ourselves, we will not be judged.
Right.
So the whole thing is set up that we keep ourselves in line under God and His authority. And other people, that will be taken care of by that same authority.
That's right. That's right. That's the way the focus is supposed to be. You take care of yourself, let God take care of them. Galatians chapter 2, verse 16. Galatians chapter 2, verse 16. Galatians 2:16 says, knowing that a man is not justified by the works of the law, but by the faith of Jesus Christ, even when we have believed in Jesus Christ, that we might be justified by the faith of Christ, and not by the works of the law. For by the works of the law shall no flesh be justified. So the point in this verse is at the end there, for by the works of the law shall no flesh be justified. Okay? If we go to Galatians chapter 3, verses 21 through 24. Galatians 3, verse 21. Is the law then against the promises of God? God forbid. For if there had been a law given which could have given life, verily righteousness should have been by the law. But the Scripture hath concluded all under sin, that the promise by faith of Jesus Christ might be given to them that believe. But before faith came, we were kept under the law, shut up unto the faith which should afterwards be revealed. Wherefore the law was our schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ, that we might be justified by faith. Right, so the point behind these verses is, yes, we have a judge, yes, we have a lawgiver, yes, we have a king, but the purpose of the law is not to justify us, right? It's to point us to Christ. And it's to show we talked about with Abraham, the extreme value of the gift that was given, right? Not to bring life or to give life of itself, right? 1 John chapter 3. 1 John chapter 3. 1 John chapter 3, verses 4 through 5. 1 John 3, verses 4 through 5. Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law. For sin is the transgression of the law. And you know, that he was manifested to take away our sins, and in him is no sin. Right? So the law can't deal with our sin. Only Christ can. The sin points out our need for Christ. Okay? Sin points out our need for Christ. Verse 5, that's why Christ was manifested. That's why Christ was shown. Right? Let's see, 1 Peter. 1 Peter chapter 1. 1 Peter 1, 14 through 16. 1 Peter 1, verses 14 through 16. As obedient children, not fashioning yourselves according to the former lusts in your ignorance, but as he which hath called you is holy, so be ye holy in all manner of conversation. Because it is written, be ye holy, for I am holy. What is this verse establishing? Who can tell me? What is this verse establishing? That God is holy and that we should be like him. Right, Sandy? So what is it establishing then? It starts with an S. No? Rhymes with anderd. Establishing a standard. I don't know, that was hard. Sorry. Right? It's okay. Right? So God is establishing a standard. Who or what is the standard? Right? Christ is the standard. God is the standard. His holiness is the standard by which we're being judged. Okay, we got to let that sink in for a second. If God is the standard by which we're being judged, and His holiness is by which we're being compared, Are we going to be equal to that, or are we going to, let's see, what does Romans say? Fall short of that. Way short of that. Okay? Right? That's why the Bible says that those that compare themselves among themselves are not wise, right? Because Ben's not the standard. Sorry, Ben, you're not the standard, man. Exactly, right? You're looking in the wrong place. When we compare ourselves among ourselves, well, I'm not as bad as, right? I haven't killed anyone, right? When we're witnessing to people, one of the things that's being left out nowadays is sin, right? Especially when we're doing, not 100% of the time, right? But in general, we like to focus on the good parts of salvation, right? You want to go to heaven, don't you? Right? But that's not really the point, is it? The point is our sin. And something has to happen because of that sin. We're going to get judged for that sin. Where does that judgment take you? Right? And now look, God has offered payment for that for free. Heaven's just a bonus. Right? But a lot of we like to call it the good old hellfire and brimstone preaching, right? Where is that? Where's that in our revivals? Why is it gone? What does Satan want you to focus on or not focus on? Right? Oh, you're fine. You'll be all right. No, I'm good. When you try and hand somebody a tract, right? I'm good. Really? By what standard? By the standard of God's holiness? Chuck?
Thought those in the society, God wouldn't send anybody to hell.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Wouldn't do that. Well, he certainly doesn't want to. But that attribute of holiness, and we could say a lot about things being holy. There's so many meanings, but just the attribute of holiness. Lately, when I've witnessed people, I've likened it to God having the attribute of being 10,000 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
We're like paper. We combust at 451 degrees, right?
Nice science class. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, but I mean, and it's a metaphor, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
You can't be with them.
No, you can't.
You're not made holy. You can't be with God.
Right.
He didn't send you to hell. You chose not to be with God.
That's right. And like Mark said, you fall way short. All right? Very good. All right, so with that, when we witness, we need to focus on the right things, right? Think about, now if we flip it to what we talked about last week with the Israelites murmuring, right? We talked a bit about that. Why were they murmuring? Because they were thirsty. So, in effect, what were they doing to bring them to the point of murmuring? Which one of the commandments would be involved there? What did they want that they did not have? What's another word for that? They were coveting, right? Okay. Thou shalt not covet. When we want things, the way we want things, what are we doing? Who are we putting ahead? Right? We're putting ourselves ahead. We're having a humanistic, right, thought that's there, where I'm in charge, I want it. If I was doing it, I would have, right? That's the basis behind our murmuring, is either coveting or putting ourselves in the place of leadership where it doesn't belong. Right? Okay? Think how hard it is. Think how hard it was to be Christ, walking on earth, right? Rick, when you're at home, do you and Janelle like the thermostat set at the same temperature? Probably not, right? But over the years, it's been ironed out and somebody's submitted one way or the other, right? Okay? Think about that for Christ, though. Who set the temperature for the day that he's walking? Who set the temperature for the day? God did. God the Father, right? What if Christ goes, man, I'd like it cooler today? And did he not have the power to make it cooler? Right? Do you think Christ ever got rained on while he's walking someplace? What? Really? Really, Father? Now? Right? But think about that meekness that's there. What if he changes that? Then what's he doing? Going against the will of the Father. Then we don't have salvation. Do you realize that one little action that we murmur about, man, it's hot out today. Why is it so cold in church? Right? Why is it so humid? Why is the sun so bright? Right? All of the little things that we murmur about, complain about. What if Christ had done that? Oh, would we be messed up? Right? But these are little things that we don't think about that God goes, that ain't right, man. That ain't right. You think about the prophet Isaiah, right? He's a prophet. He's a man of God, right? And when he comes into the presence of God, what does he do? Falls down on his face. He realizes who he actually is compared to the actual standard, right? When we look at Isaiah, we think Isaiah was probably a pretty good cat, right? I mean, he's a prophet. He's being used of God. He's a man of God. Compared to Israel and what was going on at that time, he was fantastic. But Israel wasn't the standard, right? God was. And the holiness that's there. Peter.
Maybe just a side note, but that's why I'm very concerned about these people supposedly with God.
Uh-huh.
Just having a conversation about, that ain't the God of the Bible.
Yeah.
It'd be on your face.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. Exodus, let's go back to Exodus. Exodus 20, verse 5. Exodus 20, verse 5. Thou shalt not bow down thyself. This is talking about the graven images one. This is at the middle of the graven images commandment. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord, thy God, am a jealous God. All right? What does that mean, he's a jealous God? Chuck, you jealous over Michelle?
Yeah.
Don't ruin my example, man. Right? Chuck is supposed to be jealous over his wife. Say it again.
We belong to him and no other.
Right.
There's another little nuance with the word holy. The things that Achan did
Yep.
were holy unto God. They were set aside for God's purpose, as are we.
Yep.
So every time, every little second that I use it just for me, which I do all day long, I'm just like Achan.
That's one of the things that doomed Achan the way he got punished is because that stuff was God's. So in effect, what did he do? He stole from God. Oh, God's not going to take that every day. You're right. 2 Corinthians chapter 6. 2 Corinthians chapter 6. Verse 14 through 18. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 14 through 18. Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness? And what concord hath Christ with Belial? Or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? And what agreement hath the temple of God with idols? For ye are the temple of the living God. As God hath said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Oh, going all the way down to 18. Wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you. And will be a father unto you, and ye shall be my sons and daughters, saith the Lord Almighty. Right? There's that exclusive relationship that's there, right? My sons are not Peter's sons. My daughters are not Bob's daughters. They're mine, right? So in 2 Corinthians there, the sons and daughters of God are whose? Does he want them hanging out someplace else? Right? Okay. All right, very good. So one of the things, we have our sheet, right? We have our sheet. One of the things that's interesting is that each commandment in Exodus that is given is affirmed by Christ in the New Testament. Okay? We're not going to have the time to go through each of these verses, right? But each of these commandments that's given, 1 through 10, in Exodus chapter 20, Christ refers back to and even adds extra detail about in some of them in the New Testament. So, that being said, people have often said, well, the Ten Commandments, that's Old Testament stuff. That doesn't belong to us anymore. It's not relevant anymore. That's for way back then. That's not true. It's a lie. Christ affirms it in the New Testament, which means it is also for us. What's interesting then is that because of Christ's affirmation of each of the commandments, what is Christ also confirming? Verse 11 in Exodus 20. Right? About who created everything. Who is the authority? It didn't change. None of it has changed. The commandments are the same. The lawgiver is the same. The judge is the same. The standard is the same. The authority is the same. The relationship that is desired is also the same. Something to think about. Y'all can look through this sheet on your own because we are not going to have time in 10 seconds to cover all that. And with that, we will conclude our epic adventure through God's Word today.